Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome to the Value Conversation Part 2. Now, the Value Conversation Part 1 is on our YouTube channel, and if you're watching this, you're probably still on our YouTube channel as well. We had such a fascinating time in the first conversation where we were looking at things like how to stop worrying about the going rate, what other people are charging. We looked at how important it is to work out your USP, your unique selling point, and to avoid being an average teacher, last thing we want. We talked about how important it is for us as piano teachers to think of ourselves as a business. I know when I was a young teacher, I really struggled with that. I just loved the piano and I wanted to teach the piano, but did I have a business head? No, not a chance of it. And also we talked about the importance of adopting an abundance mindset, what I can do rather than, oh, but other teachers do this or this or this. It was, I have to say, a truly fascinating conversation. I know from hearing from lots and lots of you that you have also found it fascinating and useful, which is why we decided to return with the Value Conversation Part 2. And I'm delighted to be joined by our three presenters again. So welcome to Garreth, who's over there in Germany, to Angie, who's down there in Reading, and to Sharon, who is across in Northern Ireland. And this is from my point of view, which is Yorkshire up north in England. So I'm going to hand over to each of them in turn again, and Garreth is going to start us off, followed by Angie, followed by Sharon. And they're going to be doing a 15-minute presentation each about that, and I shall be bringing them off at the end, and then we'll move on to the next one. As they talk, if you've got questions or if you've got ideas for yourself, please do put them in the chat. And there will be time at the end of their presentations for us all to come together and have a conversation about it. Because it's only through working together as a profession, and that's a global profession, I really think, that we can actually strengthen our position and really feel the professionals that we are and really adopt this business mindset. So I'm just going to hand over to Garreth. I'm going to ask him to unmute. I'm going to spotlight him for everyone and say a huge welcome again, Garreth. Thank you so much. And you have 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. So one of the points I made last time is that there's a big difference between how people perceive the value of something. And so while one person might be willing to pay, for example, £30 for it, another person might be willing to pay £60 for it. And that's a really difficult place for us as piano teachers to be in, because we're not clear whether we want to try and make a living, and we want to try and get as many clients as possible, but we also need to make our books balance. And so I really wanted to talk about that tension between our perceptions of what society values our time as and how we value our time. And I'd like to start off by getting you to think back to when you first started teaching and try and remember how you calculated how much you were going to charge per hour. And I will tell you how I did it. I was about 22 and I'd been at university. I'd had piano lessons all my life. I moved back home because I got a bit sick, and I was living with my parents again, and I wasn't really sure what I was doing after university. And I decided to give piano teaching a try, very amateurish. And I basically asked myself what my piano teachers had charged. I had a couple of piano teachers over the years. And then I pretty much divided it by half and then charged that, because I was like, I'm not very good. I don't know what I'm doing. I'll just charge half of what these experienced people did. And that wasn't a completely crazy decision. But what I wasn't doing at all was thinking about what I needed. And in the long-term consequences of that, I didn't think through at all. So when I I suspect I'm not alone in that, because I think a lot of us just sort of pick a price out of the air in the same way. And the problem was that what I'd done is I'd created quite an unsustainable situation for myself, because I was charging really too little to be able to make a real living in it. And because I was living in my parents' house, the business was dependent on me. Well, the affordability and the sustainability of the business was dependent on me staying in their house, and I was 22 and I did not want to do that. So it was just doomed to fail. And I think what often happens is that many of us start by making a bad judgment about what the market rate is and how we fit into the market. And then what we're doing for the rest of our time as a teacher is playing catch up. We're always slightly below where we should be, and then we're always being held back from charging more because we don't want to alienate our current clients. And when I moved, so I stopped piano teaching for a while, and then I moved to Frankfurt, where I live now. And Frankfurt is like the polar opposite of rural West Wales, where I grew up, which is it was a deprived area. Frankfurt's very wealthy. And I followed a more rigorous process when I set my fees here, but I still did not get adequate data, and I still set the rate too low. And that was about 11 years ago now. And I basically spent the last decade correcting for that mistake. And I think if you've seen my post about this in the forum, I've increased my rates by about 60% over the last decade, which is an enormous increase, really. And that's partly because I was below the market rate for what, I could quite easily raise that. And partly because I've become better trained and things like that. But I've also managed to keep my clients most of the way through that. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. I think what I really wanted to illustrate is the fact is that we exist in this tension between what society expects and what we need. And I think that's particularly complicated if you, like every other human, feels a little bit of self-doubt. Like we all feel, am I actually worth what people are charging? And when we're asked to name our hourly rate, it's you have to be really confident to say, well, I'm worth £50 an hour or whatever. And the problem with that is if we don't set a high enough rate, then you'll find yourself in a situation like I did when I was first starting to teach, where your business is just unsustainable. And you do hear on Facebook many times about people they've found that their business is just unsustainable in the way that they're doing it, and it creates an enormous amount of stress. And it's really tricky. So what I wanted to do with you was I wanted to show my process currently for figuring out how I'm going to figure out my rate. And rather than doing it by thinking about what the market expects and starting from that as a starting point, I think about what I need. And I'm just going to drop a link into the chat, which is going to, hang on a second. Here we go. So this is, I've just sort of prepared a little overview of what I do. So let me talk you through it. You don't need to open that if you don't want to. I will just explain it anyway. So basically, I start off by figuring out how much money I'm going to need over the year. And I work on an annual basis because that's much easier. And the way I do that is I figure out all of my annual household expenses, and then I take out I deduct the amount of money that my wife earns, and then the remaining amount of money is the money that I need to earn. And I'm able to do that very easily because I use a piece of budgeting software, which I would highly recommend if you want a piece of budgeting software. It's called YNAB, which stands for You Need a Budget. And with that, you can get a really clear sense of all your expenses, all your income, and it's a really powerful tool, and it doesn't take very long to use once you got used to it. It takes me about half an hour every month, and it's really a valuable resource. So once I figured out how much money I think I'm going to need over the course of the year, I then add a 10% buffer because I know that life is unpredictable, and I know that something is going to happen that's going to impact my ability to earn, whether it's sickness or there's going to be an unexpected expense. That gives me a real target income, which is hopefully more than I actually need. Then I figure out how much I'm going to teach over the course of the year. And I do that by thinking about how many days I want to teach per week. Currently, I'm aiming for 3 days a week because I do other work as a composer. And I also figure out how many hours I can realistically teach during that time. So I know that on a good day, I can teach 7 lessons, like hour-long lessons, but that doesn't give me much time for prep. It doesn't give me much time for admin. So having got to know what my working life is like, I know that in the course of a full working week, I can probably teach about 24 lessons that I'm really happy with, but I'm trying to cut down on that. So I'm going to aim for less. So once you've figured out how many days and how many hours per week you're going to teach for, you then need to figure out how much of that time is actually a billable hour. And a billable hour is the time where you're actually in contact with the student and they're paying for your time. And there are non-billable hours, which are your prep time and your admin time, and they are substantial, and you have to take those into account because they are essential for the running of the business. So I figure out what my billable hours are by deducting the prep time, and then I have a number of hours per week that I'm going to teach. And then I multiply the number of hours that I'm going to teach by the number of weeks that I'm going to teach per year, which for me is usually about 34 weeks because that's the school schedules here. That gives me the total number of billable hours per year. And so I've got my target income for the year, and I've got my total billable hours for the year. And I take the target income and I divide it by the total number of billable hours. And that tells me how much I need to charge if I want to make my target, charge per hour. And that's a really interesting figure because it might be that it matches your current rate exactly. And if so, that's brilliant. But it might be that your current rate is actually lower than the hourly rate that you need to charge, in which case you need to raise your value. Or it might be that your hourly rate is higher than your target, in which case you're going to exceed your target, and that's a great position to be in. And so you need to then, if the figures don't match, you need to think about what changes you're going to make. So if you're not going to reach your target, you may need to work more hours, or you may need to charge more per hour, and then you need to think about how you're going to make that work. And that's a whole process where I can't go into detail, but hopefully that's given you a good starting point. Now, I haven't at any point thought about what my clients are going to expect, and that is another really important check. You need to compare what your target rate per hour is with what the market is. And that
5 minutes, Gareth.
Okay, there's kind of 2 components to that. There's the component of what your existing clients already pay, and there's also the component of what new clients might pay based on, what's normal in your area or what's normal online. And so I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, and I'm going to talk about how I negotiate those tensions with people between what they might think about what they value my time as and how I perceive my valued time. So I think the first thing to say is I think it's really important to get your clients used to annual inflation-based price increases. If you don't do that, then 1, they get used to the idea that you just cost that amount of money, and 2, you're effectively giving yourself a pay cut every time there is inflation, and there is always inflation. So you're constantly giving yourself a pay cut. That's a really useful tool. If you need to make a bigger increase to your hourly rate, then I think the best way to do it is not to do it with your existing clients, but to do it with any new clients that you've got. So say you're charging £40 an hour, just any new clients you get, say I charge £50 an hour, and just see how they react. And you may not get them. You may, but that data is in itself useful, and you have to say it with a bit of confidence, because if you look nervous when you do it, they're less likely to agree to it. Um, I think before you do that, though, you have to make it really clear in the conversation with your prospective new clients what value you are offering. You need to say, this is the things I'm really good at, and I love doing this, and my existing students are really good at this, and we have a lot of fun during the lessons, if that's the kind of thing you want to do, and just really sell it to them so that they already have a sense of what your value is before you tell them how much that value is actually going to cost them. And there's a difference between value and cost, isn't there? Value is I value things, and then I have to pay a cost in order to get the thing that I value. Um, if a prospective client is like, I can't afford that, that's okay, because there are other teachers out there who will do it for less, and that's fine. We can cope with that. That's actually good. There's a diversity in the market, but we do need to have the guts to stand by what we're doing. But if you find you've sold, say you're saying you've said to 10 new clients that you want to charge £50 an hour, and all of them have said no, then you've probably gone a bit far. And that's how I've done it over the years. I've always done that, and it's worked out really well. And then when I roll out the price increase to my existing clients, I say, I've been charging new clients this for a year, and everybody is paying it. And so now I'm going to incrementally increase your fees so that they match the market rate, which is what the new clients are already paying. And your existing clients are like, oh, if I don't pay this, he's going to find some other students to fill those spots. And that's how I've negotiated it. And final thoughts, you do deserve to be paid fairly, obviously, but setting a sustainable price that maintains your mental health and your physical health is actually really important to your students, because they need you to be mentally healthy and physically healthy so they can continue teaching them. It is a fundamental thing. And it's a little bit like when you're in the airplane and they're doing the safety announcement, they always say, put your own oxygen mask on first before you deal with the people around you. Before you help the people around you. And that is fundamental. We cannot sacrifice ourselves long term to help other people. We can do it short term, but we can't do it long term. And most of us are going to be in this for 30, 40, 50 years. So we have to be sustainable. That's my presentation.
Hey, thank you so much, Gareth. Wonderful, wonderful. I love that analogy with the putting on your own oxygen mask when you're on the aeroplane. Very very thought provoking. Thank you so much. So I'm now going to just swap over to Angie. There we go, Angie. You have the screen.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to session 2. So just a quick recap from last time. Unlike Gareth, who actually plunged into the world of piano teaching right after university, I am kind of a transfer teacher. So I had my first career as a business consultant and a marketeer. So my experience with pricing and starting to teach, obviously I wasn't in my 20s. I was in the world of business. So I did not pluck a figure out of the air. I think in presentation 1, in the first session, you heard how I decided to peg my starting rate at about 75% of the market rate. And just a quick comparison with Gareth, over the past 10 years, I track my rate over 10 years, and I'm in the UK. The inflation rate in the UK is on average between 2 and 3% every year. Now, in the past 10 years, rolling 10 years, I have maintained a steady 28% growth in my fee. And I raise my fee every year. And I have almost 100% retention rate in my pupils. And I retained them for 18 years. So I must be doing something right, perhaps still a little bit cheap, because when I was listening to what Gareth was talking, I actually forgot to account for the fact that I am an amazing teacher and more than 10 years worth of experience that I possibly did not factor in terms of pricing. So it assumes inflation rate tracking in terms of our fee setting assumes that the product that you give, the service and the teaching that you do remain the same 10 years ago. I'd say that I've grown a lot and I'm definitely a different teacher now than I was 10 years ago. So Angie, note to self, look at my rates again for September 2025. With that though, I will move on to the presentation I'm going to do today, and I do have some slides, but just a few slides to provoke some thoughts, I guess. Okay. So last time we met, we talked about how I decided I was going to be a niche player, and I set my rate, and I continue to refine the value that I deliver to the parents who pay for my piano teaching for their kids. And I keep them for a long time. And then, as Gareth said, you know, how much did it cost me? Mostly my time and my energy. Yeah, the CPD, my continuous learning. And can I keep doing this? And I keep refining it in a circle. Now, last time round, we also discussed in the chat, it wasn't clear in the presentation itself, but in the chat when we interacted with the other teachers who were present, we discussed the idea that our customers or parents or students only perceive that our fee is expensive when we under deliver the value. Okay, and we know this when things are not right, it's when we lose them. That's why we talked about retention is a key measure. And if we are losing, if we're constantly having to replenish new students before we expected them to leave, then, you know, there's something wrong there. Okay. And yet, Gareth's conversation today, a little presentation today, talked about not undercharging. Okay. Because when we undercharge, I will tell you that that's the number one rule for marketeer. When you undercharge, you are perceived as cheap. And when you are cheap, you are taken for granted that particular product will stay on shelf in supermarket. Yeah? So think about Tesco or your local supermarket and the cheapest line of product that probably wouldn't be the one that will be your first choice when you pick something up on the shelf because you perceive that the quality is not at par with the rest. And I'd like to think that we as teachers who are here today, we are not those value teachers. We are premium teachers. We are the niche players. We're specialists in our field. Okay. Now, there is also a reaction if we are perceived as cheap by parents or students, then they are not committed. They may not think twice to skip lesson for the week. Parents may not think twice if in-school students forgot their books for 3 weeks in a row. They do not think twice if they're unprepared for lesson because, oh, that's okay, we'll just recap what we did last week. It's all right because the fee that they pay that week, it is just under the value. It's still under the value that they receive. And then most of all, as Gareth said as well, we burn out. So if we have to teach the 40, 50 students to make it sustainable for us to earn a living, then we are we're pedaling like on an exercise bike to nowhere, and we burn out and we fall out of love with teaching, and we do not enjoy it's almost like a mass market teaching, and you're constantly teaching pupils who forgot their books, they do not practice, and then the lesson's just negative, and then you moan at them, and then no one's happy in that situation. Okay, so whilst we're still talking about piano teaching, I want to talk to everybody about this marketing tool, this concept. Good marketers think about time to value when we charge. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to come off very quickly. How do I get out? There we go. You still see me? Yes. Right. Okay. Now, what is value to us? Okay. We kept talking about this, and we're, as a marketer, I was just thinking to myself, actually, when we say we deliver value in piano teaching, well, have we actually quantified what value is to our customers? Okay. So as a marketer of any product, really, value to customer can be boxed into two large categories. You have value to customer where it fulfills their basic needs. So, is that sandwich going to make me feel full when I buy it and eat it? Well, that's a basic need. But I think that the value that we deliver as piano teachers, it falls into a secondary category, okay? It does not fulfill like a basic needs. No one's going to die if they don't have piano lesson, and they're not going to be hungry. We teach, and the value that we bring, what people are buying is happiness, I think. Happiness for the learner, satisfaction because they've learned new skills, pride. Parents feel pride. Look at my child. Who knew they were so musical? And look at how happy those pupils are. Okay, so that's what we're selling. Okay, now, interestingly, I'm going to change my screen today. Technology. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Oh dear, feel like I'm back in consulting world here. Okay, now, sorry, it's a bit fuzzy here. It will eventually autofocus, I hope. Okay, now we have a timeline here, and I talked about the term time to value. So let's start with something easy. So we at Curious Piano Teachers, we love cake. Okay, let's talk about buying cake. Not the, Tesco value cake on the shelf. We are talking about the loveliest handmade cupcakes, very nicely decorated, and you pick it up. Oh, you look at that and you already know it's going to taste good. Now, when we spend this expensive, when we pay this money for this expensive one cake, we go into the shop, we don't actually ask, is it going to taste good when we buy it? We know it better taste good because we're paying that amount of money. But the cool thing is the time to, let's draw a cake. Cherry on it. Lovely, sorry. Poor drawing skills. We buy it, we go home, we eat it, and lo and behold, we're happy. Okay, the time to value is actually pretty instantaneous because when you buy it visually, you're already appreciating it. So you're happy and you keep getting this idea and this confirmation you are definitely getting the value. Now, slightly different problem for piano teachers. We have this happy little pupil who is coming every week to learn piano. And
Sorry to interrupt.
yeah,
Angie,
yeah,
would you mind drawing a little bigger? Because I think the autofocus is kind of designed to zero in on your
okay,
face.
right. Don't
So,
worry.
yeah, yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
special
Just from this one
formula.
onward. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Bright, happy, bright, happy pupil. Yay! Comes to us playing piano for practice. Apologies for my drawing skills, okay? So the pupil starts lesson with us day one, and the parents say, yay, paid you the fee. Okay. Now, the problem is we don't promise them when the value is going to drop. Because, for my studio, I said that I'm promising them that one day in the future, they are going to be lifelong musicians. And we don't know when that endpoint is going to be.
Just under 5 minutes left.
Yes, we're nearly there though, because what can I do then along the path? Because I have to make the parents pay me 18 years times 10 months that I teach per year. That is 180 payments that they would be happy to give me along the way for this delayed gratification. Okay, so I guess I got thinking quite a bit, okay, as a marketeer. And in a second, I'll shift back because it's disturbing me that the camera doesn't focus properly. I can see everyone again. Yes, so some of the things that I thought about in terms of value are the fact that I do not discuss, do you remember that I do not discuss fee without seeing them, without them visiting my studio. So it's like walking into that cake shop that you're going to spend £10 on that little cupcake. What are they getting physically? They're getting a lovely acoustic piano. Every week they're going to play on this beautiful instrument with me, and they see a lot of visual display of what it's like. And when I introduce and play some musical games, I'm assessing the child, but I'm also using material that the parents are going, ooh, my piano lesson as a child wasn't like that. Okay, this is a unique teacher. So I do not talk to them about, yes, I will teach your child, because I leave them hanging a bit and I say, let's see how we work together in our consult session. I don't charge for consult session because I reserve the right to say no, okay, to teaching the pupil. And it becomes this whole experience that they think, oh, I have confidence to sign up. And very quickly, in the very first lesson, I give them a little short video clip. It is both a practice video clip and a summary of what the young beginner is capable of doing or has learned. So every lesson, the parent receives the confirmation. That's been progress. You don't need an exam grade to have progress. Sorry, I'm going to move my... The exam grade is 2 years down the line. It's too long to wait for that value conversation with, to encourage the payment. So when you have parents asking, when is my child going to take grade 1? And the child has only been learning for 6 months, it is not grade 1 thereafter. It is the value. They're questioning the value. I am paying this fee, but I am not seeing the evidence that I'm getting the value, and therefore that fee is now expensive. Okay, so I think we'll have discussion time to discuss further in terms of how we create value, and I'll share more when we kind of discuss, if that's okay.
That's perfect. Thank you very much, Angie. You stopped as my buzzer went off, so well done you. Thank you so much. So much to take away and to think about there from that perspective. So as Angie's just said, if you have questions, if you have things in your head, then either put them in the chat right now so you don't lose them, or just jot them down somewhere. And then I'm going to hand over to Sharon. Thank you, Sharon, all yours.
Lovely. Thank you, Sally. And thank you to Gareth and to Angie. This is all, again, this session is coming together. I can see how it's weaving. Now, what I'm going to do today is I am going to talk a little bit about the pricing problem. Okay. On the whole, in the UK and Ireland, I feel that piano teachers, and I'm going to say this carefully, the good ones, the ones who have worked, the ones who have invested, the pricing is set at a rate that does not reflect their value. And I'm just going to speak a little bit. So I've got, so basically what I'm going to do is I am going to look at, because when someone struggles to charge what they're worth, it's rarely a pricing issue. Okay, pricing is actually not the issue. It usually reflects something that is deeper psychologically or culturally. It's a systematic issue. So I'm going to be looking, I've got 5 points that I want to share today, and I want to just break those down a little bit with you. I have more things, but I'm not so sure we're going to get there time-wise, but we'll see. But one of the things, as I reflected on the session last time, was one of the issues that we have with the profession is the fact that it is an unregulated profession. So anyone can come into it, anyone can teach piano here in the UK and Ireland. And the problem thereby is that, as Gareth said, how he began. Yeah, how I began. Yeah, so I had done my grade 8. I finished my grade 8. I had been awarded a distinction, which I have no idea how I got that. Absolutely no idea. And that gave me that little boost of confidence that made me go out and decide, on the recommendation of my piano teacher, because it had never occurred to me, and she had said, why don't you do a little bit of teaching? And I thought, why don't I? And off I went to do a little bit of teaching. Back in the day, I mean, that was, my goodness, that was 1997. And I remember charging £4, and that would have been a lesson, pretty sure. Yeah. Okay, so £8 an hour. That's where I started back in 1997. And but what really I got to thinking about last week is what we have done over the last 10 years at the Curious Piano Teachers is we have attracted a certain demographic of piano teacher. We have attracted the ones who are hungry. We have attracted the ones who want to invest. We have attracted the ones who want to come together and discuss and share. We want the ones, you know, we've attracted the ones who come together because they want to be better. And although when I look back at where I came from, the humblest of humble beginnings, which is why I always say there is hope for anyone. Because if I have made it through the journey, then there is a journey to be had, and anyone, be assured, can do it. You need to be prepared to invest. You need to be prepared to work hard. I may or may not have said the last time about giving up my Saturdays, as I was kind of late teens, early 20s. I used to love going shopping in the afternoon, on a Saturday afternoon with my mum. I gave that up because I was doing courses. I needed to sit and needed to do assignments, and I spent my Saturdays doing that. So I really invested. I really worked hard. But it wasn't until I was in my early 30s that I discovered the business end of it, and where I then started to charge closer to what I was worth. So here's the thing. When we're saying about this, and we're talking about charging and value, and it's really linked into just what Angie has said. There are, I don't really want to say there's two groups of piano teachers, but I want you to think about it as on a continuum, on a spectrum. And there are those who are, we know, out there with not much more than grade 2 or grade 3 piano themselves, teaching. And not having any education in terms of pedagogy. And then there are the people who, many of whom are on this call, many of whom have been for years members of the Curious Piano Teachers. And we know, and we've heard from some members recently, and I've become so aware, literally over the past couple of weeks, the frustrations within the community, within the piano teaching community, of those who do it well, who have trained, who do a great job, who offer that value, but are frustrated because there is this distinction. So I think what I'm going to say here before I go into these 5 points is I feel that we, the ones who are doing an amazing job because we have taken on board the research, we have done the courses, we have invested in ourselves, we have invested in our piano teaching studios. We need to not just sit back. We need to be proactive, and we need to pull ourselves out. And I mean, points that I have written down here from listening to Garreth and Angie is we need to communicate the value. So if we don't communicate the value, our piano parents, our potential adult students are not going to be aware that there is a difference. I feel that's the first thing. There are so many parents and they will not know that there is a difference unless, and it's obviously us, we need to communicate that. The more imposter piano teachers, so those who are doing it without having any evidence of training in piano pedagogy. I mean, I'm even talking about the people who are maybe amazing pianists and who can sit down and who can impress an audience. That's not to say that they are going to be effective teachers. So I'm talking about piano teachers who have really worked at this and who can deliver the value. So we need to communicate how we are different. Going back to, I mean, Angie, I love what you were saying about defining expensive. And expensive, of course, is when what we're getting doesn't match the value given. I had actually, before you did that, I had written down this little bit about, okay, you pay £6 for a cup of coffee. And you go into a greasy spoon cafe, okay? It's not very nice. You get, it's not made properly in a coffee machine. It's just your budget instant granules, yeah? You get it in a chipped cup. There's a chip on the cup and the spoon is slightly dirty, has not been cleaned properly, okay? And you're paying £6 for that. That's expensive. Okay, there is not value there to justify the cost. But you walk into a plush lounge within a hotel, you've got beautiful surroundings, nice music playing in the background. It's delivered by a member of the team who comes up and you get a 5-star customer experience. It's delicious coffee. You've got a little shortbread on the side. Okay, £6. It's okay. So you get the point. And I think this is a really important thing. But take that a step further and let's consider how we are communicating that, because
Sharon, you've got just over 5 minutes left.
oh my goodness, we make so many assumptions. Right, I'm going to run through these points, okay? That's all I'm going to do. So, number 1, self-worth and identity, okay? Imposter syndrome. A person may doubt their competence or believe they're a fraud, even when they're highly skilled, okay? And I think that we know who we are. We know we've worked, okay? We're not the imposters. Next point within this self-worth and identity is low self-esteem. So if we don't feel that we are valuable, we're going to find it so much harder to assign a high value to our work. It took me years to overcome that, absolutely years, because I was still stuck in the thinking that had kind of made made me who I was. You really have to break free from that. It's a very conscious decision. Otherwise, we will always, despite, we all feel that imposter syndrome. I still do to some extent as well, but I know that on the spectrum, I do have confidence with where I sit and with where I deliver. And the other point there is within self-worth and identity is the fear of rejection. I think this is a really real one. So this worry that if we ask for too much, we're going to lose our clients, we're going to lose opportunities, and we're going to end up with this feeling of abandonment or invalidation. I want to just say, I love Gareth's strategy here. Okay, so again, if you're with me, this is okay what we maintain. If you come in as a new client, this is what it is. And I think that's one way around that. Second point is this cultural and societal conditioning. And I do feel that certainly in this country, there is a big money taboo. And talking openly about money in piano teaching, my goodness, I remember Sally and I having this conversation. I remember us doing the very first ebook on it, kind of going, oh, it's money, it's money. People don't like talking about money. Piano teachers here in this country don't like talking about it. And there's this whole kind of guilt and shame around asking for it. And the second point with this is the helper mentality. And people in caring professions, so therapy, teaching, coaching, I feel are maybe not actively taught, but certainly there's something in us that helping should be its own reward. Yeah, and making it hard to charge accordingly. And again, I feel that this is an issue within our profession. I feel actually that those of us who do it very well, I think this is a problem. And the tendency then to offer stuff for free or to do stuff, I don't think we should be doing that. I think we are creating issues when we do that. Number 3, fear-based beliefs is the next thing. Got 2 points for you here. I touched on this a little bit the last time. Scarcity mindset, okay? Sally was talking at the beginning about abundance. The opposite of abundance is scarcity mindset. And this belief that clients or opportunities are going to be, are limited and can lead to undercharging to secure any work at all. Yeah, people are just not going to pay that. And only I had a business coach years ago who said, yes, this should be the contract. This is the way you should charge for it. This is what you should charge for it. And just go and do it because you're paying me £500 a month and I'm telling you to do it. And it's not going to work unless you do it. So again, it's a really hard thing to get rid of. But I feel that coming together in a community, we can help each other and we can get this clear messaging. And the other thing is, I think, the fear of success. And charging more might mean stepping into greater visibility or responsibility. And this can trigger anxiety about being seen, maybe even feeling publicly or being resented. And I do think it's something I've reflected on, and I think that even as, along with Sally, the co-founder and director of the Curious Piano Teachers, I do think this is a real thing. Yeah, it's that visibility. It's kind of, you're putting your head above the parapet. And I said this to somebody recently, feel the fear and do it anyway. And she voice messaged me back and she went, oh, I love that. She was talking about public speaking, going, ooh. And I'm like, no, you communicate brilliantly on an individual basis. You just need to get out there and do it. Number 4, I'll be super quick. Okay, boundary and relational patterns is the next one. So people pleasing, okay, this desire We're all lovely people as piano teachers, we know that. Desire to be liked, to avoid conflict, can also lead someone to set lower fees, to avoid seeming difficult. Caretaking roles, okay, if someone is used to overgiving in relationships, they may undervalue themselves in business too. And again, we are, as piano teachers, we are emotional beings. We are the touchy-feely. We are used to fixing and helping and sorting, aren't we? But again, that I think is another strong thing that kind of links into undervaluing the whole business element. Okay, and the last point. Number 5 is lack of practical skills or support. So again, linking into what we've been talking about today, having no framework for value-based pricing. So without understanding how to price based on value instead of time or effort, what's happening is we're defaulting to rates that are just too low. And going on to the other little point I've made here about this hourly rate. And parents are going to be fussed about, they're going to be all into, what we charge per hour, and that's how they. Do you know what? That's us. That's our limiting belief. And just like Gareth has said, it is so important that it's not just the billable hours, because most of it, let's face it, that's all we're charging for. We are not taking into account the planning. We are not taking into account the time it's taken us to go through the curiosity boxes. We're not all this professional development, all of the running a business. We're not factoring this in. And the final thing is isolation. Okay? And it's the lack of community or mentorship that can make it hard to get honest feedback, model empowered behaviour. It's not that we do lack community, because we don't. But we haven't actually, as a community, really dug into this, I feel, in this way before. We're 10 years in, and I think this conversation needs to be had, because so many of us are incredibly skilled, give incredibly good value. We need to communicate that value. We need to step aside. We need to pull ourselves apart from those who, because the profession isn't regulated, and because they will continue to do behind closed doors the stuff that we only see when we see little videos on Facebook and notice what's going wrong. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it there, Sally.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Sharon, so much for that very thought-provoking conclusion, really, to 3 really, really mind-blowing sessions, actually. I love the way, Gareth, you started us all off with talking about how you started and how, random it was, really. And I think many of us, I can certainly relate to randomness for many years. Not really, I'm not a business person. I hadn't got the foggiest. I just did what everybody else had done. And I particularly picked out the fact that you said you had created an unsustainable situation. And I think that rings true for many, many people, that we find ourselves in a position with fees that we don't know how to change, because we have clients and we don't know how to ease those clients into a more realistic pricing situation. So I think that will ring true, and that we're always playing catch up. But I will certainly be looking at, I forget what it stood for, you need a budget. Definitely going to look for a you need a budget. Did make me think, Sharon, at one point we did actually create our own budget thing. I'm not sure where it is these days, but it's out there somewhere on a Google Sheets that people could do, didn't we? I will go and see if I can find that. But it sounds like you need a budget is probably a good alternative, because yes, we do all need a budget within which we can work. And this idea, and it was interesting, Angie also picked this up about getting clients used to this annual inflation rather than just kind of, oh, do I need to put it up every few years? And I'm not particularly good at doing that, but annual inflation, I think, is something that really is something to think about. And then we went on to Angie, who there's something in that business brain consultancy of yours, Angie, that I feel brings so much clarity to what we do. I love the use of the word premium teachers. I found that really powerful. Premium teachers. We're all premium teachers. And maybe that's one word we could use as a way of beginning to distinguish different levels of teaching. But the thing that almost made me cry, Angie, from yours, is about what is our value to our customers, and that what piano teaching brings is happiness. What piano teaching brings is happiness. But that's a very, the way you then exampled that with the long-term metric, if you like, that 180 payments, you said. So it's very delayed gratification, and that need to always be showing the parent, showing the payer what the progress is that's happening, and in a way that isn't dependent on the exam system. Very, very powerful. And then Sharon, I thought you filling it up, and this urgency of our need to communicate the value of what we do to parents and to adults, and those 5 different areas, this imposter syndrome. I think it is hugely, it's crippling almost for us as many piano teachers. And in fact, I was just had a piano teacher here the other day for a session. And, it was, I'm absolutely petrified to be here. This is the first time I've had a session in a long, long time. And it's so hard to actually make that, to go on a course or to decide to book something that I might be shown up to be an imposter. That stops us, doesn't it, from stepping out. And I wonder how many people are afraid to become a curious piano teacher, because you kind of think, everybody else will be better than me. Don't we all think that? I think everybody's better than me, constantly, really. I look at the amazing people I work with and I think, oh gosh, if only I was a better pianist. And yeah, I mean, we all do it. We all do it. So I think it is a big problem for us. And also, Sharon, bringing out this idea that there is cultural and societal conditioning about piano teaching, and that it is, I think, on the whole, slightly negative about piano teaching, that it isn't equated with that happiness that Angie was talking about. It is equated with maybe the need to take the exam and show that you have that exam behind you. And maybe that's what we need to switch over, is to get the conditioning so that it's based on happiness. I've been watching the piano on Channel 4. My sister is not a musician. She's not a pianist. She hasn't really got any interest in. She said to me the other day, Sally, have you seen the latest series of the piano? Not really, because I didn't really particularly enjoy the first episode that I watched with the new chap. She said, watch the final. I haven't quite watched it yet, but, just look at the happiness that is conveyed in those sorts of programs, and the pianists that you're getting on there are just amazing. I think if we can just shift it towards there. And, just fascinating about the boundaries and the relationships, and how we're not good at facing those difficult conversations, and the isolation that we still all continue to suffer from. So, Rosa, okay, yes, you have to go. All right, we quite understand. Do you want to, unless you want to say this very quickly, do you want to unmute for a second, because it'd be lovely.
Yeah, I can do. Yeah, this is really helpful. The first session was really helpful. just looking at this, I've always been the person that doesn't need to charge a lot because I'm not the person whose income is the main in the house. But looking towards a case when that might be, perhaps that will be more so. I think I need to look at this carefully. And what you've all said has been really helpful. Gareth, you're looking at your budgeting. Sharon, you're saying you haven't got a business sense. My husband told me that. All these bits of paper I've got here and there, jotting down, get a spreadsheet, sort it out. But equally feeding back to him what I'm learning here, because actually we do need to value ourselves and see what we're really worth. So thank you, everybody. And Angie, you too. Thank you. Your studio is amazing. I'm working with a sitting room, so I can't have people coming in and waiting with lots of children. So, but that's a limit I've got to live with at the moment. So I turn down some homeschoolers. I will say you can only come if you pay my travel time to come to you. But otherwise, I leave it because they don't have to have piano teaching from me. So thank you.
Mm. Okay, thank you, Rosa. Thank you. And we have an obligation, I think, to ourselves, and we have an obligation to us all as a profession, don't we? That we are mindful of this and how we set our fees. It's not that we want everybody to do things the same, but we do want everybody to know that you are literally sharing hands, holding hands with other people around you. Yes, of course you can, Dhruva. Do you want to unmute and do come on and ask a couple of questions, and then maybe back to Anastasia after that?
Okay. Is there another like a session before we wind up, or I can ask at the end of it? I've written down. So
ask now.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much. Because this could take some time. So I'm in a similar situation as possibly what Angie was some time back, in the sense. So I worked in the civil service. I was in the Indian Revenue Service till just 1 month ago. And I've been playing piano since childhood, and for various reasons, I didn't go into a musical career at that time. Incidentally, I do have an FTCL and an LRSN in performance, and I'm very passionate about music, and I play like groups and things like that. But it wasn't my main career, so to speak. So, but like last month, I decided to throw in the towel and do what makes me happy, so to speak. And I just wanted to know because perhaps you may have had some internal thought process. So I know it's extremely personal. It's probably quite emotional also. So if you're okay with it, if you don't mind sharing some of the thought processes that went on and helped you to readjust in, say, starting off. Because as far as piano teaching is concerned, right now it's baby steps, because I didn't have the time while I was working with the government to do any kind of regular teaching. It was mostly workshops and things like that, but it's not the same as being fully the responsible owner of a student's progress, so to speak. So yeah, if that's something you don't mind sharing.
Shall I take the question?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, okay. So Dhruva, it was extremely scary when I threw in the towel. I was pregnant with my second child, and I decided I had to have a different career. But I wasn't sure I was going to be able to live on the fee of being a teacher, because I was a bit shocked by how much piano teachers were paid in comparison to the cost of living, basically. And I did not make an immediate switch over, so hand in my notice. And I actually took 18 months to set the business up. And I would say that if you are portfolio career, absolute tick, I think. So whatever that you already do and do well, for example, the specialist workshops, etc., keep that going and take your time to plan your studio. And what is it that you want to deliver? Because what I set up for myself I planned out what was going to be in year 1, year 5, and year 10, with year 1 to 5 being a setup phase. And that's the thing about an entrepreneur. You have to do everything. You haven't got a finance team to support you and everyone else. You have to be, and that is the biggest issue with entrepreneurship in the setup phase, you could burn out very easily, because if you're rushing getting the income in, then you haven't got time to market and do the business thinking. So
Angie, can I just interrupt? Because there was something else you did as well, and that was you got a lot of professional development, didn't you?
Yes, I did. There was a reason why it took me 18 months to plan, because I then realized that, hang on a minute, I do not want to be, like a box standard, and I need to differentiate myself. And the only way I can differentiate myself was to actually get teaching experience. I mean, I had all my grades and things like that, but that's not really teaching, is it? So so it took me 18 months to look around, I was looking, I will go and do my MTB, at the time in Reading University. And then they stopped the program. They're like, what? And then I went to ABRSM, they had a CT ABRSM, and they too stopped. And then lo and behold, I found the piano teacher's course. And Sally was my lecturer, my tutor, actually, because thank goodness I went for that. Because that really was the pinnacle of what made me believe that I was teaching differently from others. And it gave me the conviction. Now, if you start recruiting and filling, the entrepreneurs, you're thinking about getting the income in. But the problem is, if you then say, this is the amount of time I have, my daytime to teach, and I start filling it up, the problem is then you haven't got the time, to do your personal development, because if you're in a setup mode, you need so much time. I was thinking in that first year, and I think subsequent PTC applicants were asking, how much time do you devote to training? Now, I think if I tell the real numbers, the real ratio, I think it would just stop anybody from doing the training. But I did say to myself that in my first 5 years, in my business model, and with my husband, obviously, I was making a loss. So business-wise, if I calculated, and I would only break even because I was also building this studio. It's a purpose-built studio with waiting room, etc. I would only break even after year 5. Now, I thought, actually, in a professional world, if you're setting up a business, non-piano teaching world, it takes quite a few years to break even. And I do not understand why in this profession we think that we definitely need to be in profit from day one. I think that's the pressure that everyone feels, and therefore the nervousness and the imposter syndrome and the fear of rejection comes from that. But if you are putting a business sense on, nobody goes into business asking for investment or to the bank with a plan for making profit in year 1, day 1. No, it's 5, 10, 15 years down the line. So I think plan with that in mind. And I always, from day 1, I stopped myself from doing anything that wasn't in line with my mission, really. And that includes being very careful about who I take on as pupils too. Hope that helps.
Okay, yes, I hope that helps.
Oh yeah, that was really very, very useful. I've taken very detailed notes about this. So
Okay.
thank you so much for sharing. By the way, I just wanted to share something back in case you're doing the whole thing of drawing something on a board. So I use a program called Mirroring 360, I use a Windows computer and I also use an iPad. So it works across platforms. I think if you're in an Apple ecosystem, it works more seamlessly. But where I can just scribble on my iPad and it'll just show up on the screen and then share it to others.
I was kicking myself for not thinking about using my iPad, because
okay.
I did that the other time.
Okay, right, cool. So yeah. And yeah, thank you so much. The other thing, just by way of, giving back or sharing, one book which, in fact, I would say it played a big role in my decision also was, there's a person called Doctor or something, Angela Miles Beeching. She's written a book called Beyond Talent, which is about the whole business side of music. And she actually started off by teaching. She's a cellist, she's a cello professor, etc. And she used to counsel her students when they were finishing college and, okay, I want to make a career in music. But what do you do? Because it's like it's an unstructured field. It's a portfolio career, like you said. So she used to give them handouts initially. First, it was just across the table. Okay, maybe you can try this out, do this, do that. It was counseling. Then she made that into like little handouts, and then she decided to make it into a book. And that book is now in its third edition. So I heard about her through the Topham podcast. I'm sure you guys would be
Yeah,
aware
we
of
know
his
Tim.
thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So this was one resource which it gave me the confidence to, say, okay, I think I can figure out this business side of things, perhaps, sort of.
Very
So I
good.
thought I'd just
But
share that. Yeah.
that's really useful, because I think we'll all go off and have a little look at that. There is another one about business that I can't remember the name of at the moment, but it will come to me. I think the other thing to really consider is the teaching side of it, Ruva. So, the pedagogy that, as I think Angie said, we can all play, but actually, I'm sure you're finding when you come to the teaching, well, it's like this little undiscovered place. How do we teach notation? How do we make music from the start? And it's really, really important. As a teacher that is going to be a premium teacher, I'm going to give it Angie's name, that you know all these different bits and bobs, or that you're working towards it in some shape or form. Yes, thank you for that, Angela Miles Beeching. I'm just going to go back to Anastasia. You're rethinking, are you, Anastasia? Do you want to just unmute? Tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I do annual increases. I didn't when I first started. I kind of plucked a figure out of nowhere, in that I kind of went with a little bit less than, or around about what my girls' piano teacher charged. Because although she had a lot more experience than I did, I knew I was bringing something different in the way I was going to be teaching. So I kind of pegged it to there, and then I kind of didn't increase it very regularly, and then I was playing catch up for a while. But I actually thought I'd done okay, and I've just gone on one of those online Google things and worked out how much I've increased it since I first started and what it's at now. And it was kind of shocked to find it's only just above inflation increases, because I thought I'd built in the increase in experience and so on that I've gained in that time, and I clearly haven't. So I do increase regularly every January. But yeah, I think I need to do a bigger increase this year, especially with everything that I've been doing in terms of my diploma and stuff that's tangible. I think it's a good opportunity, but I need to think that through a bit more, I think. I just also posted in the chat, Dhruva, that like Angie, I'm a transfer teacher, and after having my children, I ended up teaching musicianship in a local music school, which I did for many years, and then decided I wanted to go into piano teaching. And I also spent over a year preparing to teach piano, even though I was already doing the musicianship, and then did both for a while, building up the business for about 2 years before I then switched totally into piano. So yeah, it really pays to think through what you're bringing to it, and what you're offering and how it's different to other people.
We talked about this last time, didn't we? And your USP, your unique selling point. What is it that makes you that premium teacher?
Yeah, and the other thing I just want to say as well is the importance of having a vision and a vision plan. It's knowing, okay, so what's it look like now? What's it going to look like in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? And I know that when I kind of reflect on successes that I've had, it's because, and I've kind of always done this very strongly, kind of, I know where I want to get to. And it's usually more ambitious than anything else. I think I maybe on the last call mentioned about, you've got to reach for beyond the stars. You've really got to push the boat out, because it's so easy just to fall short. So you don't want to set your goal too short to fall short of that. You kind of really want to think about what it is you want to do and make it ambitious. Really dream and plan that out.
I just wondered whether, Gareth, you were just coming to the last few minutes of the session. Any thoughts from you just to summarise, and then I'll go to Angie and then to Sharon to finish off, just very briefly.
Yeah, sure. I wrote down 4 things, but I'll probably just do 2. The one thing on the inflation thing is, if you don't increase according to inflation for many years, at some point you're going to feel your own budget has become very tight, and then you have to do a price rise, and then you have to force your clients to accommodate a big price rise in order to catch up with inflation. And that's the worst thing to do with a client. So that's why it's important. And then the other thing was talking about, Angie's time to value thing. I think that's really useful. And I think because so much of the gratification of learning piano in terms of the pride and the accomplishment is delayed, our job as teachers who want to maintain a high retention rate has to involve ensuring that our students leave happy every time. And that requires various adaptations. We can't just be giving them whatever they want, because we need to foster their long-term development, but we do need to do stuff that makes them feel good in the lesson. So particularly with my kids, they almost always end with a game, because kids just love playing a game. And I really do try and accommodate any student requests that they make, even if the request isn't quite right for that student, and I try and negotiate it with them to make it more suitable. But the parents see that I'm taking the kids seriously, and then they really value that. I think student recitals are a really important part of the continuing value thing, because the parents of the beginners see what the advanced students are like. They see, oh wow, that's inspiring, and it can happen. I do mine once a year, but it can happen really regularly. And I think my experience I do a lot of creative work with my students, and parents love it when they get a written out score of what their child has composed, and they can see that their child is proud of that. And I frequently just do that. I've gone too long, I'm going to shut up now.
Okay.
But those are my points.
Wonderful. Really, really lovely points to have. Thank you. Angie.
Okay, so my parting slide that I can share earlier on is this one here. This is a slide that's the Bible of marketeers, okay, all over the world. This is what we follow and what we look at every year, because, well, believe it or not, there is a global World Happiness Index. And have a look. I mean, this is across ages, across all countries, and there is a common theme, isn't it, about what makes people happy. And the first bit is theatre, dance, concert. Okay, and then you have the sports, which is why we see, student retention with some pupils leaving for sporting activities, because that's what makes them happier than being indoors practicing sometimes. Then you have singing and performing. Okay, and then you have the trips, and then you have the TV and everything else. So I don't know about you, this gives me great joy, because we are absolutely in the business of making people happy, aren't we? Yeah. So don't forget to convey that. That is the thing, making the value visible. I also want to talk about, we are very studio-centric today, and I'm also a teacher in schools, so I'm a peripatetic teacher. So how do you make value visible, really, to pupils and others whom you never see? Okay, and it does mean that I have additional customers. My customer is the music department, is the head of school. I am not employed by them, but I am them. And I walk the halls. So receptionists know me. The head teacher knows me, because she gives announcements during concerts, but I am always the parry teacher who is with my pupils, always in all school concerts. I always have my pupils playing in all concerts. My pupils are musicians. They play intermission music and warm-up acts for other performances, class performances in school. So when you are visible like that, the value is just apparent, you know. And it doesn't matter that my pupils don't do all the grades that other teachers do. It's just never lost.
I can see a part.
Go.
I can
Right.
see a part 3 coming on.
Ah,
Making the value visible. Can't you just see that? Sharon, just very briefly to wrap up. Two minutes.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm going to go with that Maya Angelou quote again. Okay. People will forget or will not remember what you said, what you did. They will remember how you made them feel. So it links back into what Angie has just been talking about in terms of the happiness. I believe one of the reasons that parents, and if we're talking about children as students, are not happy, links straight back into lack of pedagogical training on the teacher's part. So when we are understanding strategies that enable success, okay, success builds success, and we feel successful. This month's Curiosity Box is again in terms of the 5-star customer experience that I feel, again, we can all consider again, because it is those little things about the experience that again links back to not just how the students feel in terms of their learning, but also just the broader experience and the feeling that parents get. And sometimes it can just be simply having a conversation where we're 100% focused on them and listening to them, where it's not about us. Because the number of people out there today, and I'm just kind of speaking from, my own children's experience and people that I'm in contact with, and where it's a quick chat and you kind of, before they have even finished the conversation, you can see that they're looking at something else and on they go. So just that kind of, I care about you and I'm listening to you, can make a huge amount of impact. I'm going to just read out the summary I have to kind of summarize what I was talking about. So, feeling unable to charge what you're worth isn't a flaw, it's not a failure. It's usually a symptom of complex, layered conditioning. Working through it involves, and I didn't get to this part, both inner work, so I'm talking there self-worth, healing, mindset shifts, and outer strategy, which is the pricing. I've already mentioned the need for communication and business skills, ideally in a supportive environment. Kind of already got the environment bit, haven't we? So we just need to have another conversation. Oh.
That's wonderful. I mean, truly wonderful. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Gareth. Thank you, Angie. Thank you, Sharon. It is a fascinating conversation we are having, and I'm leaving with happiness and care and listening and sort of metrics and value all meshed up in one, and how we make people feel. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for those of you who joined us live. Let's continue to have this conversation. Bye-bye.